3 Nights by Run_Mellow. Summary. "'Cause I've been thinking," Vanitas scoffed. His slick routine of flippancy came easy to him. "Oh, this again? And I've come to the conclusion that you need a hug, desperately." In which an unfathomably touch-starved Vanitas lets himself be held through the night. Perhaps Vanitas had miscalculated. Perhaps recruiting Noe had been a bad idea. Certainly he hadn't bargained for all the emotional labor he'd have to do in exchange for a bit of vampire strength. And perhaps he was brooding about it. The phantom feeling of fingers around his wrist stung, and the echoes of, "I've decided I'm staying with you," rang in his ears. Vanitas wasn't ungrateful, but he also wasn't able to hold on to anything. It was only a matter of time before that promise would turn to dust in his hands. To make matters worse, there was, quite obviously, something weighing on Noe's mind. It was clear in the way his eyes kept flicking towards Vanitas with questions burning in his sporadic gaze, in the way he kept biting his lower lip as though to keep a tumble of words from falling out of his mouth, in the way his posture grew stiffer and stiffer with each step he took. It annoyed Vanitas how easily he could read Noe. He didn't want to feel responsible for others' feelings, but it was hard not to when he could practically hear his own name spinning around inside Noe's head. There was only one way of dealing with such pesky things as emotional baggage, regardless of whether the baggage consisted of partners in crime or an incessant inner monologue, and that was the old and dusted, but also trusted, coping strategy: avoidance. So when Noe sat down on his bed and tilted his head in the way he did when he wanted to chat for a bit before drifting off to sleep, Vanitas declined the unspoken invitation. He shaped his lips around the clipped version of "good night," cleared his throat of the oxidizing prickliness, and added a half-sincere "sleep well, and try not to wake up on the floor." "Thank you." Noe's mouth curled into a shamelessly bright smile. "I shall try." Vanitas didn't feel like he'd earned such a smile, so he waved it off like he was swatting a fly and strode towards the windows with purpose. Past his bed, past the conversation he didn't know how to turn up for, past his feelings, wishes, and straight for a night spent in the company of a frigid rooftop. Like attracts like, he supposed. Hi?" Vanitas blinked, his eyes open, to a close-up of Noe's face. It was a pretty face, especially bathed in the soft hues of twilight, and it immediately spiked Vanitas' annoyance. "Did I wake you?" Noe asked, sounding awfully apologetic, as he should. "No," Vanitas answered, because he didn't sleep. Ever. On good nights he managed a few naps, but that was it. "I've been thinking." Noe folded his hands in his lap, gave the impression that he really thought much of his thoughts. "Did it hurt?" Vanitas asked. He could be quite sarcastic when the mood struck him. "No?" Noe shook his head, and the light of the moon painted a halo around him, soaked in naivete and as innocent as ever. It was quite a view, sparklier than the lights of Paris, blinding to the point of nausea. "Okay." Vanitas didn't care to explain his jokes, but he also didn't care to suppress the tremble that racked him. "You're cold," Noe concluded. He was wrong, of course, but Vanitas didn't point it out. Then a hand landed on Vanitas' shoulder, rubbing gently, too heavy and too warm. It was no doubt intended as a reassuring gesture, but touch had a way of reaching right through Vanitas' clothes and skin and defenses, straight to his bones. It made him shiver even more, deeply and inwardly. "Come inside," Noe said, demanding in that earnest way of his, putting the force of all his stupid supernatural strength into his words to lend them more meaning. "I'm good," Vanitas insisted, turning his head to look intently at the blue astermite steam that puffed from a nearby chimney, curling into artful swirls. He heard Noe sigh, the shuffling of clothes, the sound of leaving. Somewhere a clock was counting the seconds. It was probably inside Vanitas' head. To hell with it, he thought, sort of uncharitably, because in the end, it didn't matter any more than anything else, which wasn't much at all. Self-medication was the well-earned privilege of a doctor, and so he wrote himself a prescription for Noe. Actually, he squealed and leapt to his feet a little too fast. Dizziness took him for a spin, roof plates and sky blurring into visual flicker, but Noe grabbed his hand, hauled him out of the carousel. It felt like yet another promise, and Vanitas wanted to accept it so bad. "I'm tired," Vanitas said, although his pulse sang an upbeat tune. Noe smiled oh so understandingly, which was all sorts of presumptuous on his part because Vanitas really wasn't in the business of being understood. All the same, Vanitas let himself get tugged along back to the hotel room, let himself get tucked to bed. He spent the rest of the night committing the soft feel of the mattress against his back to memory, trying to convince himself that it wasn't worth getting used to. One hand twisted in the curtains. One foot was already halfway out the window. Vanitas was ready to face the night. "Wait," Noe said. A finger tapped Vanitas' shoulder with metronomic insistence. "What?" Vanitas turned, sliding down to sit on the window pane, arms crossing over his chest. "Stay." Noe didn't elaborate, just stood there and let his pleading eyes speak for him. He probably thought he was impossible to say no to. He was, unfortunately, right. It irked Vanitas that he let such pathos convince him, but alas, he clicked his tongue and threw out a "Fine," surrendering without much of a fight. He grazed past Noe and continued towards his bed. "You're getting bold, aren't you, Noe?" he asked, fluffing his pillows. "Telling me what to do and all." "It's not that, it's windy tonight." Noe's voice was a warm breeze, ruffling Vanitas' hair from behind. Too close, not close enough. "So, afraid a puff of wind will blow me off the roof?" All the answer Vanitas received was silence. He kicked off his shoes, slipped his coat from his shoulders. It landed on the floor with a grey flop. He slithered under the covers in one motion, pulling the duvet up all the way to his nose. There was a crack in the ceiling, and Vanitas stared unblinkingly at it, trying to ignore Noe's hovering presence. It worked splendidly until Noe went and made himself impossible to ignore, sat down at the edge of Vanitas' bed, making the mattress dip. Vanitas wanted to kick Noe. He also sort of wanted to invite Noe into his bed. In the end, he did neither, just waited it out. "It's a mistrust thing, isn't it?" Noe asked, putting his hands flat on his thighs. "Refusing to sleep around other people?" "No." Vanitas snipped from the edge of his lip, tasted the lie. "Oh," Noe answered, his brow creasing into a frown. "Well, in any case, I wanted to let you know that you can trust me." It was the kind of phrase Vanitas couldn't imagine anyone speaking truthfully, but if there was an exception to that rule, it had to be Noe-shaped. Still, trust was a big thing to offer someone, even someone as honest as Noe, and Vanitas fancied himself more of a taker than a giver. "Okay," he ended up saying, non-committal. The silence was as thick as sludge, and Noe couldn't read the room if the world formula itself wrote its truth into the walls, so instead of leaving the conversation, he lingered. "I've been thinking," he said after a dreadfully long pause, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. But whatever freight train of thought he was hoping to unleash was whisked away by a gentle. Vanitas held his breath as Noe rushed to the door, oddly excited by the prospect of an unexpected visitor. He opened the door with a force of eagerness that nearly ripped it off its hinges. "Mademoiselle Amelia," Noe beamed. "Can I help you with anything?" The familiar name loosened the stiffness in Vanitas' core, and he let his eyes close as he listened to the easy small talk passing between Noe and Amelia. "The kitchen had some leftovers from the breakfast buffet, and I know you have a sweet tooth, so—" Amelia's voice was as saccharine as the smell of pastries she brought with her, very attractive and not at all in Vanitas' taste. Noe was easy to impress with a bit of sugar, though. He accepted the gift with oohs and ahs, and about 1,000,000 thank yous. The door falling shut was Vanitas' cue to pretend to be asleep. He listened to the footsteps that came closer, felt the weight of Noe's eyes, then fake snored, loudly. It was a clever device to avoid conversation, and Vanitas was proud of himself for it, which was the last positive thing he got to feel about himself before slipping into a nightmare. A church bell tingled, signaling the arrival of midnight. The gentle resonance vibrated through Vanitas' body, jerking him awake. He snapped his eyes open, curled his fists into the sheets. The world returned to him with the next sharp inhale. Paris, hotel room, bed. Oh. According to the chunkiest and least reader-friendly of Vanitas' medical textbooks, long exhales had been shown to stimulate the vagus nerve, thereby eliciting a parasympathetic relaxation response. It's practically as effective and anxiolytic as opium. So, putting his hope in science, Vanitas breathed out for a count of 5, forcing the tension out of his body. It was half successful. Vanitas. Noe's voice cut through the remaining panic. Vanitas cleared his throat. Yes. Are you awake? No. Vanitas answered. He didn't have the patience for stupid questions, but he also didn't quite have the heart to leave Noe's curiosity hanging. So despite his common sense, he turned to his side, stared into the darkness, searching for Noe's eyes. It was a grey darkness that made shadows dance across the room like ghosts, but 2 red lights told him where to look. Why? He asked. Because I've been thinking. Vanitas scoffed. His slick routine of flippancy came easy to him. Oh, this again? And I've come to the conclusion that you need a hug. Desperately. Noe tossed out a barb, and his aim was perfect. It hit Vanitas right where it hurt the most. His penchant for mistrust ought to have prepared him for such a betrayal of boundaries, but he found himself surprised by the accuracy of the diagnosis Noe had given him. The worst part was that he didn't even hate the idea of making himself a perfect fit in Noe's arms. He didn't know what to do, so he tried to turn it into a joke. Are you offering? Yes, Noe answered with absolutely 0 degrees of irony. I volunteer. A dismissive grunt turned to ash in Vanitas' throat, and instead he heard himself asking, Do you now? He felt his feet hit the floor and carry him across the room, stopping only when his knees hit Noe's bed. Noe lifted the duvet. It was a simple act, but it inspired a host of complex feelings in Vanitas, feelings so infectious he feared he'd have to surgically remove them. He practiced detachment each and every day of his life to be able to hold himself together, but his stamina failed him, and he fell into the bed. The mattress creaked under him like a warning sound, but it was too late to turn back without the sacrifice of an explanation, or at the very least an excuse. Besides, Vanitas wasn't a quitter. So he wiggled into position, wrapped himself around Noe with bated breath, expecting it to ache. And it did. Noe was solid enough to make the embrace feel real, but the softness of his body was white-out torture. It was far more painful than a scalpel against bare skin. So painful that Vanitas' mind turned to static. So painful that it didn't hurt at all. So painful, in fact, that it felt like relief. There was nothing for Vanitas to do but melt to the wishing beat of Noe's breath as it slowly evened out into a snore. As Noe switched through the stages of sleep at an impressive rate, the distance between them grew impossibly smaller. Then, Noe tightened his hold around Vanitas, pulling him closer to nuzzle against his cheek, making a personal hug pillow out of him. It was the sort of objectification that spoke directly to Vanitas' heart, which raced ahead, chasing after something. He wanted to do something reckless. So he fluttered his eyes closed and let sleep take him away. Oh my goodness, I've finally come around to read the first VNC fic of this channel. I was especially so excited about this one because VNC is like, it changed something in my brain chemistry just as BSD had. Maybe even more because of its like vulnerability, intimate moments, everything in it is perfect to a T. Especially with Noe and Vanitas' relationship and their complexity of their nature. I love it so much. If you didn't know VNC existed, please do check it out because when it hits hard. So yeah, I'm so happy to finally read the first VNC fic and officially join the VNC Podfic fandom, which I don't know if there is any yet. I don't know if there are any VNC podfics yet, because I've searched on YouTube, but I didn't search anywhere else. As far as I know, this is the first VNC podfic on YouTube as a whole platform, which is insane to me. But yeah, thank you so much, Ron Mello, for giving me permission to podfic this. This was super concise, and every line just had this whiplash effect of ow. Yeah, this is exactly what Vanitas' thought process is like. You get his character so well, and I'm honored to have had the chance to podfic this for you. To my followers, thank you so much for your patience, everyone. I think I've been on a very weird schedule lately, but between college work and everything else, it just, I don't know, there was not much time to do anything really. So yeah, I appreciate your patience so much. And yeah, I hear you. Chapter 4 of the Not So Perfect Pair is coming soon, I promise. I think you get my system by now. It's one shot or one new fic and then another chapter. So it's just I alternate between things so you don't get bored and I don't get bored either. So yeah, sorry for all the waiting and all this hassle. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. If you'd like to show more support, I'm available on Ko-fi, and Super Thanks is now available. Hope you have a great week, and see you next time.